The entire ballroom stood on its feet. Hundreds of powerful people filled the grand hall. Business leaders, celebrities, politicians, and executives applauded as a young African woman slowly approached the stage. The spotlight followed her. Her hands trembled slightly as she accepted the crystal award. Near the back of the room stood one man who looked completely out of place among the cheering crowd. A man feared across Korea. A man whose name could silence an entire room. Her husband. He watched quietly from the shadows. His expression never changed. Because unlike everyone else in that ballroom, he believed he already knew the truth. His wife did not love him. She respected him. She appreciated him. Maybe she even cared about him. But love? No, never love. Then she stepped toward the microphone. A single tear appeared in her eye, and the first words that left her lips made his heart stop. The greatest blessing of my life was meeting a man who still doesn't realize how much I love him. The audience smiled. Some even looked toward him, but he didn't understand. Not yet. What happened next would completely change the life of the Korean Mafia boss who thought his marriage was built on obligation. If you love Korean billionaire romance and mafia love stories like this, subscribe now to @Physial_Threads and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Years before that unforgettable night, Kang Min-jae had become one of the most powerful men in South Korea. At 34 years old, he controlled businesses worth billions. Officially, he was the CEO of one of Seoul's largest investment groups. Unofficially, everyone knew there were darker forces behind his influence. Nobody challenged him. Nobody crossed him. And nobody truly knew him. The world saw an untouchable billionaire. An intimidating king. A man born with everything. The truth was far different. Min-jae had grown up in loneliness. His father had built an empire through fear. His mother died when he was young. Love was never discussed in their household. Affection was viewed as weakness. Trust was dangerous. By the age of 18, Min-jae had learned a simple lesson. People always wanted something. Money, power, status, protection. Nobody stayed because of love. Everyone stayed because they needed something. That belief followed him into adulthood. And eventually, it followed him into marriage. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, a young woman named Zinul Ndlovu was building a very different life. She wasn't born into wealth. She wasn't connected to power. She came from a peaceful coastal community where family, kindness, and education mattered more than status. She had always dreamed of helping people. After years of studying and working, she earned a scholarship that brought her to South Korea. The opportunity changed everything. She arrived with hope, with ambition, with excitement. But life in a foreign country proved harder than she expected. Language barriers, financial struggles, loneliness, cultural differences. Still, she never complained. She worked harder than everyone around her. And eventually, her determination attracted attention. The right kind of attention, and the wrong kind. What Zinul didn't know was that her path was slowly moving toward a man whose heart had been locked away for years. And when their worlds finally collided, neither of them would leave unchanged. The first time Min-jae saw her was completely accidental. It happened during a charity event. He almost didn't attend. He hated public appearances. But one of his companies sponsored the event, so he showed up briefly before planning to leave. Then he noticed her. Not because she was trying to attract attention. Quite the opposite. While everyone rushed around networking and impressing important guests, she was helping an elderly volunteer carry supplies. She smiled. She listened. She treated everyone with respect, whether they were wealthy donors or cleaning staff. Min-jae found himself watching longer than he intended. It annoyed him. Why was he paying attention? She wasn't glamorous. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Yet something about her felt genuine. Real. A quality he rarely encountered. For the first time in years, curiosity entered his heart. But what he didn't know was that this small moment would become impossible to forget. Weeks passed, then months. Fate continued placing them in the same spaces. Professional events, charity projects, business foundations. Each encounter revealed another side of her. She worked tirelessly. She spoke honestly. She never treated powerful people differently from ordinary people. And strangely enough, she seemed completely unimpressed by his status. Most women became nervous around him. Others became overly interested. Zinul did neither. Sometimes she even disagreed with him. Politely. Respectfully. But honestly, that honesty fascinated him. For the first time, he found himself looking forward to conversations. Unfortunately, feelings were developing on only one side. At least that was what he believed. Because while Min Jae was slowly falling in love, Zinel appeared distant. Friendly, respectful, kind, but distant. She never flirted, never hinted at romantic interest, never gave him any obvious sign. The more he cared, the more uncertain he became. And uncertainty was something Kang Min Jae hated. Then one evening, everything changed. A scandal erupted inside one of his rival organizations. False accusations spread across social media. Several innocent people became targets, including Zinel. She had done nothing wrong, yet her name became attached to the controversy. Job opportunities disappeared. Professional relationships suffered. People judged her before learning the truth. For the first time since arriving in Korea, she felt completely helpless. And Min Jae watched it happen, silently, until he couldn't anymore. Because despite all his emotional walls, one fact had become impossible to ignore. He cared about her, more than he should, more than he wanted, and far more than he was willing to admit. What happened next would change both their lives forever. The storm surrounding Zinel grew worse each day. Rumors spread faster than facts. Employers stopped answering her calls. Projects vanished. Doors closed. She spent many nights sitting alone inside her small apartment wondering whether she should leave Korea altogether. Maybe her dream had failed. Maybe she didn't belong there. Maybe it was time to go home. Meanwhile, Min Jae was fighting a different battle. For years he had controlled businesses worth billions, negotiated impossible deals, defeated dangerous rivals. Yet confessing his feelings to one woman felt harder than all of it combined. His advisors noticed the change. His closest friend noticed. Even his employees noticed. But he ignored them. Until one night his grandfather finally confronted him. The old man studied him carefully. "You love her." Min Jae immediately denied it. His grandfather laughed. "The problem isn't whether you love her. The problem is that you're terrified she doesn't love you back." The words struck harder than expected. Because they were true. Painfully true. For the first time in his life, Kang Min Jae feared rejection. Days later, he made a decision. One that shocked everyone around him. He proposed marriage. Not after years of dating. Not after a grand romance. He simply asked her. Directly. Honestly. Unexpectedly. Zinel stared at him in complete disbelief. The proposal made no sense. At least not to her. Why would a man like him want to marry someone like her? What she didn't realize was that Min Jae had spent months battling his feelings. And now he was terrified of losing the chance forever. He explained that he respected her, trusted her, admired her. He wanted to build a future together. But there was one thing he never said. The 3 words trapped inside his heart. "I love you." He couldn't say them. Not yet. Not after a lifetime of disappointment. Not after years of believing love always came with conditions. And so the proposal felt strangely formal. Careful. Controlled. Zinel hesitated. Not because she disliked him. In truth, she had admired him for a long time. She saw the kindness hidden beneath his cold exterior. She saw the loneliness nobody else noticed. But she also knew he carried deep emotional wounds. Eventually she said yes. Not because of money. Not because of status. Not because of fear. Because she believed there was goodness inside him. Goodness worth protecting. Unfortunately, Min Jae misunderstood her acceptance from the very beginning. He convinced himself she had agreed out of gratitude. Perhaps loyalty. Maybe obligation. Anything except love. That single misunderstanding became the invisible wall separating them after marriage. And neither of them realized how painful that wall would become. The wedding was elegant, beautiful, private. The media celebrated it. Business circles discussed it endlessly. Everyone assumed they were the perfect couple. Only they knew the truth. They were strangers trying to become partners. And although they genuinely cared for one another, neither knew how to express it. The first months inside the mansion felt awkward. The home itself was breathtaking. Large gardens, luxurious rooms, endless views of Seoul. Yet sometimes it felt colder than winter. Especially at night. Min Jae often worked late. Zinel quietly waited for him. Sometimes preparing meals. Sometimes leaving notes. Sometimes simply hoping he would come home safely. But he misunderstood every gesture. He viewed them as kindness, politeness, responsibility. Never love. The more she cared, the less he recognized it. And the more he doubted her feelings, the further he withdrew emotionally. Without realizing it, both hearts were slowly breaking. But what neither of them knew was that fate was preparing a moment that would eventually reveal everything. Just not yet. Because before that revelation could happen, they would both have to confront the fears hiding deep inside their hearts. And that journey was only beginning. The first year of their marriage passed more quietly than either of them expected. From the outside, they looked like the perfect couple. Every magazine that covered Seoul's elite circles seemed fascinated by them. The powerful billionaire and his elegant wife. The intimidating king of an empire and the graceful woman who stood beside him. Photographs captured beautiful smiles, perfect appearances, sophisticated events. But cameras never captured what happened after they returned home. Because behind the luxurious mansion doors, both of them were fighting silent battles. The strange thing was that neither battle was against the other. They were fighting themselves. Every morning, Zinal woke up before sunrise. She enjoyed the peaceful silence before the mansion became busy. Sometimes she would prepare breakfast herself despite having a full staff. Other times, she would spend time in the garden. The flowers reminded her that beautiful things required patience. Love was the same. At least that was what she believed. She never pressured Min-jae, never demanded affection, never complained when he worked late. She understood that some wounds healed slowly. What she didn't know was that her patience often made him believe she expected nothing from him. And because she expected nothing, he assumed she felt nothing. One morning, she carefully prepared his favorite breakfast after overhearing a conversation between his grandfather and one of the chefs. It took nearly 2 hours. When Min-jae entered the dining room, he noticed the meal immediately. For a brief second, warmth touched his heart. Then the familiar doubts returned. Maybe she was simply being considerate. Maybe she would have done the same for anyone. He thanked her politely. She smiled warmly. Yet both walked away feeling strangely disappointed. The distance between them wasn't created by hatred. It was created by fear. And fear often builds stronger walls than anger ever could. Months later, Zinal launched a foundation dedicated to helping international students adapt to life in Korea. The project meant everything to her. She remembered the loneliness she had experienced when she first arrived. The uncertainty, the isolation, the feeling of being invisible. She wanted nobody else to experience that pain. The foundation started small, very small. A few volunteers, a modest office, limited resources. But her passion attracted attention. Soon more students joined. More sponsors appeared. More opportunities followed. Without telling her, Min-jae quietly funded much of the foundation's growth through anonymous donations. He never wanted credit. He simply wanted her dreams to succeed. Every time she celebrated a new achievement, he secretly felt proud. But he never told her. Meanwhile, Zinal noticed mysterious support arriving whenever the foundation faced difficulties. Problems somehow disappeared. Resources appeared exactly when needed. Partnerships formed unexpectedly. Deep down, she suspected who was responsible. But because he never mentioned it, she never confronted him. Instead, she silently appreciated him. The problem was that appreciation remained locked inside her heart. And the words he desperately needed to hear never reached him. One rainy evening, everything almost changed. The weather was terrible. Thunder shook the city. Heavy rain flooded streets. Min-jae had traveled outside Seoul for an important meeting. Hours passed. Then midnight arrived. Still no sign of him. Most people inside the mansion went asleep. But Zinal remained awake. She sat near the window watching the storm, checking her phone repeatedly, growing more worried each hour. When Min-jae finally arrived home around 2 in the morning, he immediately noticed a light still glowing inside the living room. As he entered, he found her asleep on the sofa, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, his photograph resting beside her. For several moments, he simply stood there. Something inside him tightened, because nobody had waited for him like that in years. Carefully, he approached. She stirred slightly. Her eyes slowly opened. The moment she realized he was safe, relief flooded her face. "Gosh, you're finally home." Those simple words carried more emotion than she intended. Min-jae felt it. For the first time, he truly felt it. Then she smiled softly. "I'm glad you're okay." His heart began beating faster. For one beautiful moment, he almost believed she loved him. Almost. Then the doubts returned. Perhaps she was simply worried about her husband. Any decent person would be concerned. Again, he talked himself out of happiness. Again, fear won. And what should have become a breakthrough became another missed opportunity. But what happens next changes everything. As the foundation grew, so did Zinal's reputation. People admired her compassion, her leadership, her intelligence, her ability to connect with people from different backgrounds. Eventually, she began receiving invitations to speak at conferences. Universities requested her presence. Organizations sought partnerships. Her influence expanded rapidly. Min Jae supported her every step of the way, quietly, from a distance, always protecting her path, while convincing himself he meant very little to her. Then one afternoon, he overheard a conversation that shattered him completely. He had returned home earlier than expected. While walking through the garden, he heard Zinal speaking with one of her closest friends. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but certain words stopped him. I wish he knew. Zinal sighed. Her friend smiled. Then tell him. It's not that easy. Why not? A long silence followed. Then Zinal spoke softly. Because I don't want him to feel pressured. Min Jae's heart raced. For a brief moment, hope appeared. Then her next sentence destroyed it. I know he never wanted this marriage the way normal people want marriage. The words hit him like a knife. He quietly walked away before hearing the rest. What she didn't know was that he missed the most important part of the conversation. The part that came immediately afterward. The part that would have changed everything. Because after he left, Zinal looked toward the sky and whispered, I just want him to discover my love naturally. But he never heard those words. Only the painful part. Only the misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding grew larger than ever. From that day forward, Min Jae became more distant. Not cold. Not cruel. Simply resigned. He convinced himself that she was happy, comfortable, content, but not in love. The realization broke something inside him. Yet he accepted it. After all, wasn't that what he had expected from the beginning? Nobody stayed for love. People stayed because they needed something. His old belief returned stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Zinal sensed the change immediately. She noticed the sadness behind his eyes, the exhaustion, the growing emotional distance. But she couldn't understand why. She tried spending more time with him. She invited him on walks, prepared his favorite meals, asked about his day, listened carefully whenever he spoke. Unfortunately, every effort only convinced him she was being kind out of duty. The more she loved him, the less he recognized it. And the more he withdrew, the harder she tried. Neither realized they were trapped inside the same misunderstanding. Months later, Min Jae's grandfather fell ill. The news shook the entire family. The old man had always been the emotional anchor, holding everything together. During his recovery, Zinal visited him almost daily. She read books to him, shared meals, kept him company, made him laugh. One evening, after she left the hospital room, the grandfather looked directly at Min Jae. You are the biggest fool I have ever met. Min Jae frowned. What did I do now? The old man laughed weakly. That woman loves you more than her own happiness. Min Jae immediately looked away. The familiar pain returned. Grandfather, I'm serious. You don't know that. The old man shook his head. No, you don't know that. Those words lingered in Min Jae's mind for weeks. Could it be true? Had he misunderstood everything? Or was his grandfather simply trying to comfort him? The uncertainty became unbearable. Yet before he could find answers, a major event changed the course of their lives. An international humanitarian organization announced its annual award ceremony. The event recognized individuals who created meaningful social impact. Thousands of candidates were considered. Only one would receive the highest honor. When the final announcement arrived, the winner shocked nobody. Zinal Ndlovu. Her foundation, her leadership, her dedication, her sacrifices, everything she had built earned global recognition. The news spread across Korea. Reporters celebrated her achievement. Students thanked her publicly. Communities praised her work. And Min Jae felt proud beyond words. He arranged an entire celebration inside the mansion. Flowers filled every room. The staff prepared a grand dinner. Everyone expected Zinal to be overwhelmed with happiness. Instead, she seemed strangely emotional, as if the award meant something deeper than success, something personal, something important. Late that night, after everyone left, she stood alone on the balcony overlooking Seoul. The city lights sparkled beneath the stars. Min Jae quietly approached. Neither spoke for several moments. Then she smiled. "You'll attend the ceremony with me, right?" He nodded immediately. "Of course." She looked relieved, almost tearful, and for reasons he couldn't understand, she whispered, "Good." Then she turned away before he could see the emotions in her eyes. What Min Jae didn't know was that she had already planned something. Something she had been preparing for months. Something she hoped would finally reach his heart. A message she had never been brave enough to tell him directly. And that message would soon be heard by an entire ballroom filled with powerful people, including the one man who needed to hear it most. But before the truth finally reaches him, one last misunderstanding is about to push him to the edge of giving up on love completely. The days leading up to the award ceremony felt strangely different. Neither Min Jae nor Zinel could explain why. The mansion remained the same. Their routines remained the same. The city outside continued moving at its usual pace. Yet something invisible had shifted. For Min Jae, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. For years, he had learned how to control uncertainty, how to dominate negotiations, how to predict people's motives, how to stay emotionally protected. But lately, nothing made sense anymore. His grandfather's words refused to leave his mind. "That woman loves you more than her own happiness." Every time he remembered those words, he felt hope. Then his fear would immediately destroy it. Because hope was dangerous. Hope created expectations. And expectations led to disappointment. At least that was what life had taught him. Meanwhile, Zinel spent every evening reviewing a speech. Not because she was nervous about receiving the award. She had spoken before large audiences many times. This was different. Far different. Because hidden inside that speech was a truth she had carried for years. A truth she had never been able to say directly. Not because she lacked courage, but because she feared pushing him away. She knew how fragile his heart truly was beneath his cold exterior. She knew how deeply rejection had shaped him. She knew how difficult it was for him to trust love. And so she had waited. Patiently. Faithfully. Lovingly. Hoping one day he would see what had always been in front of him. But what she didn't know was that the day she had been waiting for was finally approaching. And everything was about to change. The morning of the ceremony arrived. The entire mansion buzzed with excitement. Staff members moved quickly. Phones rang constantly. Messages arrived from all over the world congratulating her. Flowers filled nearly every room. When Zinel came downstairs, she found dozens of bouquets arranged throughout the entrance hall. She smiled immediately. She already knew who had sent them. Min Jae stood nearby pretending to review documents. As if the flowers had appeared by magic. As if he wasn't responsible. As if she didn't know him well enough by now. For the first time that morning, genuine laughter escaped her lips. And hearing that laughter made something warm stir inside his chest. A feeling he wished he could keep forever. Hours later, the ceremony finally began. The event was hosted inside one of Seoul's most prestigious venues. The ballroom looked breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the enormous hall. Elegant decorations lined every wall. International guests filled hundreds of seats. Executives, diplomats, philanthropists, scholars, influential leaders, all gathered to celebrate extraordinary achievements. Min Jae normally hated events like this. Yet that night, he wouldn't have been anywhere else. His seat was positioned near the front, close enough to see every expression on Zinel's face, far enough to remain unnoticed. Or so he thought, because many people in attendance were secretly watching him, not because of his power, not because of his wealth, but because they knew something he didn't. As the evening progressed, several awards were presented. Applause echoed throughout the ballroom. Speeches came and went. Then the host finally announced the final award of the night. The most prestigious recognition. The room immediately grew quiet. A large screen displayed photographs of students, volunteers, and communities impacted by Zinel's foundation. Images from years of hard work appeared one after another. Smiling faces, graduation ceremonies, mentorship programs, lives transformed through opportunity. By the time the presentation ended, many audience members had tears in their eyes. Then her name was announced. Thunderous applause erupted throughout the ballroom. Zinel slowly rose from her seat. Her heart pounded. Her hands trembled slightly. Not because of the award, because of what she was about to do. Meanwhile, Min Jae watched her with overwhelming pride. No matter what happened afterward, he thought, she deserved every moment of this recognition. She walked gracefully toward the stage, accepted the Crystal Award, thanked the presenters, then stepped toward the microphone. The entire room fell silent. For a few moments, she simply looked across the audience, searching, looking for one person. Eventually, her eyes found him. Min Jae. Their gazes met briefly. Then she began speaking. I am deeply honored to receive this award tonight. Polite applause followed. She smiled, then continued. When people see achievements, they often see the final result. They see success. They see recognition. But they rarely see the people standing quietly behind those accomplishments. The audience listened carefully. Her voice remained calm, yet emotion slowly began appearing beneath each word. There are people who enter your life and change everything. Not because they demand attention, not because they seek recognition, but because their presence becomes a source of strength. Min Jae listened respectfully, still unaware, still believing she was speaking generally, still believing this had nothing to do with him. Then her voice softened, and the sentence that opened our story finally arrived. The greatest blessing of my life was meeting a man who still doesn't realize how much I love him. The room became completely silent. Several audience members smiled immediately. Some looked toward Min Jae. Others exchanged knowing glances. A few even laughed softly. Because for many people, the meaning seemed obvious. But not to him. Not yet. Years of insecurity prevented him from understanding. Years of emotional scars blocked the truth. He simply assumed she was describing someone else. Perhaps a mentor. Perhaps a relative. Perhaps someone from her past. His heart tightened painfully, yet he forced himself to keep listening. What she said next would slowly begin breaking down every wall he had built around himself. When I first arrived in Korea, I felt completely alone. I had dreams. I had hope, but I also had fears. There were days when I wondered if I belonged here at all. Her eyes began shining with tears. Then I met someone who believed in me before I believed in myself. Min Jae's breathing slowed. Something about those words felt familiar. Very familiar. He saw potential where I saw limitations. He offered support when I expected judgment. He protected my dreams even when I didn't realize he was doing it. A murmur spread through the audience. People were beginning to understand. Many were already looking directly at him. But Min Jae remained frozen, his mind desperately trying to process each word. Zinul continued. He never asked for recognition. He never wanted credit. In fact, most of the time he tried to hide what he was doing. Soft laughter filled the ballroom. Several guests smiled knowingly, because everyone who knew Min Jae personally recognized that description immediately. Still, he struggled to believe it. Why would she be talking about him? Why? The question echoed repeatedly inside his mind. Then tears finally escaped her eyes, and her voice became even more emotional. The world sees a powerful man. They see success. They see influence. They see someone impossible to approach. But I see the man nobody else sees. The ballroom remained completely silent. Every person hung onto her words, including Min Jae, especially Min Jae. I see the man who quietly worries about people he loves. I see the man who pretends not to care when he actually cares too much. I see the man who believes he isn't worthy of being loved simply because life taught him painful lessons. For the first time all evening, Min Jae stopped breathing. His eyes widened. Because nobody knew those things. Nobody. Not even some of his closest associates. How could she possibly know? Then reality slowly began settling into his heart. A possibility. A terrifying possibility. Could she really be talking about him? The thought felt impossible. Yet every word pointed toward him. Every sentence. Every memory. Every detail. His heartbeat became almost unbearable. Meanwhile, Zinul looked directly at him. Not beside him. Not above him. At him. And for the first time in years, Min Jae couldn't look away. I spent years trying to show him how much he means to me. Her voice trembled. I waited for him at night. I celebrated his victories. I worried when he traveled. I prayed for his safety. I treasured every moment we shared. Tears now flowed freely down her cheeks. And suddenly memories flooded Min Jae's mind. The stormy night. The meals she prepared. The notes she left. The smiles. The concern. The patience. The kindness. The countless moments he had dismissed. The countless signs he had ignored. One by one, every misunderstanding began collapsing, like dominoes falling, like walls crumbling, like darkness finally giving way to light. And then came the words that shattered him completely. I never married him because I felt obligated. The room became absolutely still. I married him because I loved him. A collective gasp spread through the ballroom. Min Jae felt tears burning behind his eyes. For years he had convinced himself otherwise. For years. Yet here she was, saying it in front of hundreds of people. Without hesitation. Without fear. Without conditions. The love he had doubted was real. It had always been real. Zinel smiled through tears. I loved him before he proposed. I loved him on our wedding day. I loved him during every misunderstanding. And I love him now. The final wall inside Min Jae's heart broke. Completely. Irreversibly. For the first time since childhood, he cried. Not quietly. Not internally. Actual tears. Years of loneliness. Years of insecurity. Years of believing nobody could truly love him. All of it poured out at once. Many audience members wiped their own tears. The atmosphere had become overwhelmingly emotional. But Zinel wasn't finished. She took a deep breath, then delivered the final part of her speech. The award I received tonight is an honor. But if I could choose only one achievement in my life. She paused, looking directly at him. It would be becoming his wife. Silence. Then thunderous applause exploded throughout the ballroom. People rose from their seats. Some cheered. Others cried. Many applauded harder than they had all evening. But Min Jae heard none of it. Because his entire world had narrowed to one person. Only one. The woman standing on that stage. The woman he loved. The woman who loved him back. The woman who had been trying to tell him for years. Before the applause even ended, he stood. Then slowly began walking toward the stage. The audience watched breathlessly. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. When he finally reached her, tears remained visible in both their eyes. For several moments, neither could speak. Neither needed to. Their hearts were already saying everything. Finally, Min Jae took her hands. And for the first time in his life, he stopped hiding. I was wrong. His voice cracked. I was wrong about everything. More tears escaped his eyes. I thought you stayed because you felt obligated. I thought you deserved someone better. I thought love like yours couldn't possibly be real. Zinel squeezed his hands gently. Then came the words she had waited years to hear. I love you. The ballroom erupted again. But this time neither of them noticed. Because at that moment, they existed in their own world. A world where fear no longer controlled them. A world where misunderstandings had finally ended. A world where love had finally spoken. Months later, life inside the mansion felt completely different. Nothing about the building had changed. Yet everything had changed. The silence was gone. The distance was gone. The uncertainty was gone. Conversations lasted longer. Laughter filled the halls. Affection became natural. For the first time, they stopped assuming. Stopped guessing. Stopped hiding. And simply loved each other. Together. Years later, people would still remember the famous speech. Many called it one of the most beautiful declarations of love ever given publicly. But for Min Jae, the speech was more than that. It was proof. Proof that love exists. Proof that vulnerability isn't weakness. Proof that sometimes the person who loves you most has been standing beside you all along. You simply need the courage to see it. This story reminds us that love is not always loud. Sometimes the deepest love is expressed through patience, loyalty, consistency, and quiet sacrifices. Fear can make us misinterpret even the clearest signs of affection. Past wounds can convince us that we are unworthy of being loved. But genuine love does not depend on status, wealth, power, or perfection. It grows through trust. It survives misunderstandings. And it flourishes when people finally choose honesty over fear. Min Jae learned that being loved was not something he had to earn through power. Zinel proved that real love remains faithful even when it goes unnoticed. And together they discovered that the strongest relationships are built not on grand gestures alone, but on seeing and valuing the heart of the person beside you. If you made it this far, let us know where you're watching from and comment your favorite moment below, like this video, and subscribe to @Physial_Threads for more emotional Mafia love stories.